Welcome back to First Principles. This is part 2 of my conversation with Mukesh Bansal, founder of Mintra and co founder of CureFit. In part 1, we followed his arc from a childhood in Haridwar to building and selling Mintra and his restless move from one company to the next. In this half, we get into how he spots and hires talent, the mental models he keeps returning to, his views on health and longevity, why he writes and podcasts, and what he makes of parenting and success now. If you haven't heard part 1, I'd start there. Otherwise, let's pick up where we left off. Over the many years, the 3 decades, so many companies that you've been part of, one of the most important things that you must have done is find and hire talented people.
Right. Yeah.
Right? What is your most common method to spot talented people?
Work with them for 6 months.
Let's
And-
say you're not doing that. But
So
because
let me-
before
let me-
you
let me-
get.
let me dwell on that. Most of the really good people that I've found and have done good stuff together, it's after that 6 months of working together. My hit rate on day one is very poor, but my hit rate after 6 months is stellar. And it's just I don't know how to do the job of 6 months in a 1 hour interview. I don't think I'm
So
good
what
at
do you
it.
do? How do you
So
convince
then-
people to work with you?
No,
for
I think
6
then you look for some of the things, and there's a hiring versus investing, maybe two different lenses. But what I try to look for is track record. So for me, biggest indication of your going to future performance is past performance. So most of my interview is I just try to like what is the interesting work you have done, and I try to gauge how much whether first of all you have created impact in the past or not, and whether the company created an impact that you are taking credit for, or you really did a heavy lifting of that. And through asking a bunch of probing questions, you get a sense of that. And there's also a bit of becomes a character test. Like there are, in corporate, everyone learns how to over project, but over projection is a very bad trait in startup. Startup, you want people to brutally honest. I think I love people who are who say I suck 5 times and only one time look I did something amazing. People who keep touting their own horn are like again a bad signal in my eyes, because startup requires this brutal honesty and candidness. So some of those things you can gauge for. So that's what I look for, honesty, track record, references. I over a period of time I had a lot more people from the network, people I have worked in the past, or someone I know who's worked in the past. I think that is a very reliable. Someone has seen you perform in a job and is vouching that Rohin did amazing job, from 2016 to 18. For me, nothing else comes closer to being able to hire a person than the testimony of someone I trust who is vouching for the quality of your work. So some of these signals, I think, but
Good.
despite that, I think a lot of mistakes happen.
And in conversations, what are some of your most favorite open-ended questions?
Just walk me through a journey and I listen patiently. And sometimes, people also disqualify themselves. I've had many interviews where persons keeps talking non-stop for 40 or 50 minutes. And then I just say, thank you. This is literally so how, you get to gauge a lot of things, how people are constructing, their own story in their own head, how they are rationalizing, choices they have made, but how mindful they are of the fact that this is only 30-minute interview or 45-minute interview. So you need to pace it out. You tell the key points, what's reasonable is probably 5 to 10 minutes. Beyond that, you're taking too much time to tell something, just because I'm just trying to orient myself about your career trajectory so I can dig into relevant areas, but you are not, And so I think there's a lot one can gauge just from, how people approach their one question. Their ambition comes through. Like you can just say very matter of fact, say, I change job from this company to that company, or you can say, I like this about that company at that point, therefore I change, right? So you can see like this, you have this meta cognition ability. And some of it is, I'm saying it now out loud since we're talking, but a lot of it is also intuitive. I just, over a period of time, I also changed my hiring to a lot more, almost feeling driven. I feel, I've learned some level decision making requires a kind of higher degree of intelligence, which is both rational, cognitive, but also emotional. and it's very hard to put in words. So when you have interview debrief, people try to somehow articulate, but ultimately, what they're trying to say is, I don't like this person. Versus saying,
But that's very hard. How do you bring that out? Because especially in an interview debrief situation, or anytime somebody has to write down something formal about an experience that they had, it's very hard to put down saying, I don't like this person, because then somebody else is going to ask you, can you explain that in very objective?
So that's person to culture. Like, I am okay if I am running the debrief, I am okay. Like, I like you, and you are saying you don't like this person. That's good enough. I don't need to just, like, the reason, you are a proven performer. I trust your judgment. So I will, I let you make a lot of gut calls about investment or product choices, building product, killing product. Why wouldn't I let you make a gut call, even if you can't, explain why you are, don't like this person?
Got it. You just mentioned that in startups, one of the things which is rightly valued is the ability to speak the absolute brutal truth, right? But that doesn't always sit comfortably with a lot of people, especially in the last 10 years, as a lot of experienced people from larger, well-established corporates have moved to startups.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, where does that friction, what kind of people don't make that jump? Because some do successfully make that jump and some don't.
See, I think there is a difference between there are people who want to win at any cost, and there are people who want to look good every day. And somewhere this is maybe painting the world in a very binary manner, but on that continuum,
winning versus looking good.
Right. I just, you can make me feel as bad as you want, as long as I'm clear, like, this is whatever you're telling me is optimizing our chance of winning. And that's the environment I keep repeating. Whenever I have frustrated conversation with people, I just keep repeating, I just want to win. I have nothing wrong with you. Whether I'm frustrated or upset, angry, it's not because, I have some beef with you. I just want to win. Let's figure out how do we win here, right? So now, sometimes I say it explicitly also, like literally these many words. Sometimes it's implied, but you can see that, desire to win. And you need to have, almost irrational desire to win, because I think logically, if you do the odds, startups don't make sense. Like, the risk adjusted rewards for startup don't make sense. If you like the entire venture capital as a class, their returns are far worse. It's just the top quartile makes stellar returns, and therefore they make the whole class look good. So if you take all the entrepreneurs who start, and if you do the math, I have never done the math, but I'm pretty sure if you look at all entrepreneurs who start today, how much money they collectively make over the next 20 years is a lot less than the money they will make if they all of them, just pursue their professional career. So there has to be something, very
there comes the
unreasonable.
compounding argument again, which is why I was asking you, right? Because sometimes safe vertical compounding does deliver absolute returns over the long run, but there's something else you're saying.
And that is the right rational choice to do. Rationally speaking, no one should start a company. Least of all because you think it will one day make you money or be a big outcome. Because the day one, the risk adjusted reward is a lot lesser than any other safer path. That's why those paths are called safer, and they are proven and time tested. So something else, you want to create an impact in the world. Like, let's take example of Pawan and Bharat Skyroot. For them, just building the rocket was so important. When I invested in 2018,
they apparently cold emailed you on
they
LinkedIn.
cold emailed on LinkedIn, all that. I met them. I had also some interest in this area. But what was a clincher for me is at some point I told them, look, I don't know this whole rocket thing will work or not, but if it works, it will take at least 10 years. Are you willing to work on it for next 10 years? They said, we are willing to work on it for rest of our lives. I said, okay then. But I said, like, you'll have to sustain yourself. What is the minimum you need to sustain yourself? They said, as long as you get a salary of 50,000 rupees a month. I did some, back of the envelope calculation. I said, that's fine. I can guarantee that for next 10 years, you will get at least that much salary, whatever happens. And so, it was not about that they want to build a company of certain size or they had some valuation aspiration or anything else. It's just that, there was such a strong, they're willing to compromise, give up a lot of a safe path to have a shot at building, right? So it's like, what is the cost you are willing to pay for that shot, and how important is that shot for you?
But now that you've mentioned, your desire to win, I'm sort of seeing this 2x2 axis where your horizontal axis on the right goes to am I learning?
Yeah.
And the vertical axis on the top goes to am I winning?
Right.
So your saying that you place yourself in that, am I learning and am I winning?
Yeah.
And you iterate, that's your space. That's basically the space where
That's a
you...
good framework. And I think that makes sense because I do, I do keep asking questions. Am I winning? Mostly answer is you're not. So,
But that is the
but
executing part.
that's
That is the
right.
iterating part.
But yeah, yes, the drive comes from that. The desire to like, what are you doing?
Hmm.
Now that I'm building this, I might as well build, aspire for the best possible product, best possible outcome,
Got
best
it.
possible customer
Got it.
love.
Because it is jagged, right? So sometimes you're not winning,
Yeah.
but you're learning.
Right.
And sometimes you're not learning,
Yeah.
but you're winning. It's
Yeah,
that
that's right,
jagged
that's right,
growth
that's right.
that
And
happens.
let me double click on that, right? So when sometimes people ask me for advice about whether they should do a startup or not, I ask them to do one thought experiment. I said, like, let's say you get this shot, you get some funding, you try it for 5 years, and it fails at the final phase. How will you feel? The people who think they will have a lot of regrets, they should not start a company. I say, what I tell them, like, no matter what happens, you'll be learning so much every day. What is the value? If you give a lot of value to that also, then your risk adjusted reward goes up. You will be a dramatically better professional. No matter which job you go back to or start a new company, you will be 100x better than you who are today because of that 5 year experience. So how much value you ascribe to that?
Got it. Now, switching to something else. You've written 3 books. You've written No Limits in 2020. You've written Hacking Health in 2023. And then you wrote the Startup Code in 2024. You meditate almost daily?
Yeah, when I have good stretches, sometime I miss.
Great. You write frequently. You apparently also do these 5-year goals and look backs. Is that, have you done that?
Yeah. I have. It's after 50. I think it's. I'm thinking about how to do it better.
Got it.
But I would say from the age of 25 till 50, I think so what I used to do is the annual goals. So I'll typically take last week off, and I don't like to take a holiday last week of December because a few times I have taken it, I come back feeling,
More stressed.
so like, stressed and exhausted and fatigued, and suddenly January 3 Monday morning. So I, if I take a holiday with family, I try to do it between 15 December, 25 December, and then just do nothing and really think, introspect, reflect on the last year, think about next year, but also next 5 years. So I think whenever I can, I try to write. I try to almost visualize. Like, I distinctly remember when I was 30, I would try to visualize my life at 40, my life at 50. I have those notes probably written somewhere. Same, there is, I'm trying to recall a book. I'm not now recalling the name, but these are all make-believe milestones, whether New Year or start of the month or start of week.
Right. I
But
mean,
there are
I was just
reset
thinking of that
opportunities.
because when you said, I take the last week off to think about the next
Right.
year, and I was thinking, I mean, there's nothing different between
Right.
that week and the
Right.
next. But I also understand
Yeah.
all of us humans understand that something
Right.
new is beginning.
Right, exactly. And also creating kind of these windows for you throughout the year where you give significance to certain dates, certain day of the
Right.
week, certain day of the month. It helps you zoom out of your day to day. Otherwise, so easy to just be completely swamped with what's happening every day or reacting to all the incoming stimulus. We should talk about that at some point as well, because one of the perpetual quest I am on is to limit stimulus in my life.
Where are you on that right now? What
This
have
year
you
is
cut off?
stellar. News. I don't know any news at all. If something significant happened in last week, you should tell me in the course of this podcast. So now I hear news is when somebody in the office is talking,
Got it.
or my son end up telling me something, or my parents end up. Otherwise, I have no idea what's going on in this world, and
Got
so happy for that. So I think, but I lost train of my thought. What was I trying to answer?
No, we were talking about the annual look back.
Yeah,
and-
right. So that's the exercise I do regularly, and I think reflection is very, very helpful. For I think I'm sure I talked about in my book pretty extensively about this as well, the first one. So I think this allows you to create a story for yourself. Answer who you are, what do you want, where you're going, what matters to you. What trade-offs you're willing to make, and so on. And I think as introspection, I think is a very powerful skill for an entrepreneur. Most good entrepreneurs, I think, are very good introspectors as well, very good model builders. They are always building some framework of looking at things. So you can frameworks allow you to process a very complex situation from a very
mental models,
like
frameworks.
Yes, you just create this 2 by 2,
Yeah.
which makes sense, right? It's a without that, you're always lost in detail, and you have like all these complex narratives running, but
Right.
you sometimes don't see things in black and white, which is required to make a decision. So yeah, maybe I'm rambling, but yeah, I think for me this.
No, it isn't. It's also this. I think the last week of the year is also this place where you, in some senses, if you're, since we're talking about visual models, etc., and all that, you're in some senses placed equidistant between the past
Yeah.
and the future. Like
Right,
the next year
That's right.
is just starting, and it's the best time for you to
Right.
reflect on the past year. So it allows you to time travel in either direction in some sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, partly also, it's again, maybe I'm just trying to maybe answer it mostly from the entrepreneur point of view. You're always working for some vision for the future, but if you don't give yourself time to think about what the vision for the future is, then you're reacting too much, and that becomes a very meandering path. You really don't have a destination. You have to first build an air castle in your head, and also get some kind of game plan, which may be crude. And while I think the annual reflection is useful, but I think for entrepreneurs, and I feel an entrepreneur's job is at least 20-30% thinking job, and that's where a lot of the so-called hustle thing. Sometimes entrepreneurs get in the mode of early stage, first-time entrepreneurs, just this mad, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you're not thinking, and you don't know. Like, you may have a lot of this nervous energy, but not a very directed energy to take you somewhere.
How do you solve for that? Because you're absolutely right that if you're constantly executing all the time, it's the thinking time when you're refactoring and making better plans, etc. What's your advice to people to actually create and set aside and find time for that? Because it's hard. Because like you said, startups themselves are very demanding. Then people come back home and they usually have families at some point. And then there are all these other stimuluses.
This is, this in some ways goes to any kind of habit forming activity. See, all of us today live in all of our hours are accounted for. I'll actually first take an example of a fitness. Now, let's say today I'm somebody who does not work out. It's not like my mornings are free. I'm chilling at home, having coffee, reading newspaper. You're probably on laptop doing something, or walking the dog, or dropping kid to school. Like, some life is happening. How do you create a hole in that life? It has to be very deliberate decision, and then you have to work hard at it. You have to I'll give my example of at some point when I moved back to India, my kind of health started to go for a toss, and at some point decided I really have to work out in the morning. But how do I used to sleep at the time around 12:30, and then I'll wake up just in time to drop my daughter to school. So there is no time. So I realized that unless I start sleeping by before 10, I can't get up early at 5. So I forced myself to make that change. It was very
series
hard.
of decisions.
It's a series of decisions. So you have to analyze, how do I create similarly now. Let's say, first of all, you decide that you want to give 1 day a week. Now, what is your method of 1 day a week? You can say one full Saturday. That's probably in some way easiest. Or you can say 2 half days, Wednesday second half and Saturday second half. You have to clear in your head. Then you have to work. Just start by blocking on your calendar. But usually what happens when we block, again, we end up filling with something else. So you need to have some discipline about that, some accountability. A lot of founders will have somebody, either, I don't know, chief of staff or a EA or somebody, have that person be accountable. These days, maybe use AI to be account, and you have to work hard at it. And there is no easy answer. But the reverse is also true. Once it becomes a habit, like, there are a lot of people say, "Ki, I always do this on my Saturdays," because it's a practice habit for a period of time.
It's become muscle
Right.
memory.
So I think you have to pick up a habit code and apply all the learnings from habit code to create this habit.
Got it. You mentioned chief of staff or executive assistant. Now, in your 30 years, I'm sure you've seen this role or these set of roles, which is founder's office / chief of staff / executive assistant, evolve.
Yeah.
How would you trace that evolution, and what's your take on what those roles are today and what they mean for founders?
See, one is, I think these days, I think chief of staff is also becoming fashionable. You are a 6-month-old startup and you're a chief of staff. That doesn't make any sense. You should have a stellar engineer or a stellar salesperson or someone who's a great brand person. You should not have a chief of staff. You are chief of staff. I think chief of staff is, for me, is primarily it's basically a very
Who needs a
context.
chief of staff?
When you're juggling too many balls and you have a lot of senior people. So now, see, it's very hard to engage other senior person, because I need to have same context as that person. Now, this guy is senior for not for nothing. The person is able to manage complex operation, But if the person reporting to me, they also expect me to add value. But if I don't understand what they are doing, the nuances of what they are doing, the complexity, so in some ways, the chief of staff can really act as a bridge. Now, this person has, the way I look at good chief of staff is you double my hours. I have 50 hours a week, you make it 100 hours a week. And we both of us operate. So it's like a kind of bandwidth multiplier function. And we kind of divide. I'm going to go deeper in this area, you go deeper in that area, but we kind of continuously comparing notes and have kind of creating a shared context. And a good chief of staff should be able to fill in for you when you are not available, should be able to also show you the mirror, because sometimes as a all the CEO founder jobs are very delusional, you make up. So if you really set it well and have someone with who is reasonably mature, like these days people also call a program manager chief of staff, call it program manager, or unless you have if it's a duck, what it looks like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck, is a duck, right? So I think the chief of, I mean, see, where does chief of staff come from? US president as a chief of staff, and it's probably the most powerful position of the administration. The caliber to be chief of staff to that,
Right.
some of the very big company CEOs have chief of staff. So I think at in a very high growth stage where you just have just too much going on, you feel like you're not able to manage things. That's where and chief of staff is not someone uh, fresh MBA, 2 year out of college. That's, you can call it whatever you want, your company.
Right.
But for me, real chief of staff is somebody near equal relationship.
Got it. What are some of your most frequently repeated mental models or actions on a regular basis? When you face a new problem, it's a new opportunity, someone comes to you with something, what do you default to?
So I'll try to recall a few from memory. Usually, for me, these mental models, they show up when there's a need. It's very
Right.
difficult
You
to
don't
recall.
label it like that. Yeah.
You don't have to.
Okay,
So,
what's
but
your...
I'll tell you, two, three does come to mind.
Yeah.
So one is, I call it, see, in a startup journey, you hear no a lot. Investors say no, customers say no, prospective employees say no. You just, so I call this no means not now. And that's how pretty much I process all no's in my life. Because and there's a countless example of an investor said no. Now, again no, but after 7th try, they gave me the money. Temasek, first time I pitched to them is 2010. First time they invested in Curefood is 2020. And I know probably countless time I would have gone to them. So I think similarly with sometimes there's like this superstar hire you want to make, and your first conversation now, but person joins you 2 years down the line. So I think that is the reason that mental model makes sense to me. It kind of frames it no in a very optimistic, positive manner. But yeah, so this is kind of one.
But it also helps in not taking a knock on the ego. Because
Right,
one of the
exactly.
things that founders take knocks on is you go to the same VC, let's say twice or thrice, and then there is a very easy tendency to say, I'll never take money from this VC again. Or this person refused to join me. That person is never welcome in my company.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
How do you keep
absolutely.
your ego out
No,
of
it's if you process that way, you're saying this is what is being said no to my pitch today, which might have been crappy, or my business today, but it will be different 6 months from now. Like no one says, Rohin, I'm not going to invest in your company today
And
or
never.
for rest of my life. Do not ever show up in my office, right?
Right.
Most people, in fact, say opposite. Say like, this
Let's
is my
keep
feedback.
talking.
Let's keep talking. Why do you come back when you make progress? So
Got
why do you want to process it like a perpetual no? I think other thing, which is somewhat related to what we are saying, actually two things have come to mind now. So one is I told you that I obsess about product in the first year or two. So I use this phrase called product is marketing. And I say like, if we build, it's like one of those, this whole philosophy, if you build it, they will come. Let's build something really amazing. And for me, bar of amazing is, first of all, do I love it or not? Do everybody in the company loves it? Does your family love the product you've created? Your neighbor love the product? Then look for those signs, right? So that product is marketing is, one model I use. Other is this balancing short term and long term. So I call it long term patient, short term aggressive. So like every day, if you're in a startup environment, I want people to like charge ahead as fast as possible. But simultaneously for long term, be very patient. It's okay. Not much will happen in 1 year, 2 year. Our product market fit may take 3 years and so on. So like you're playing a 10-year game, but also you're simultaneously very aggressive on a daily
That's
basis.
a hard thing because it must trip most people up, right? Because in organizations, when people are working, aggressively on a short, there is also this tendency to see every small miss
Yeah.
or failure and over catastrophize around that. But you're saying don't do that. It's okay. Give your best on the short term, but remember that the game really is
Yeah,
the long term.
and look at the examples. Zomato was started in 2007. They did not pivot into food delivery until 2017. Now imagine for 10 years not even getting into category for which you will be known for. Myntra turned profitable last year. After what, 18 years, right, to get to the one meaningful milestone of profitability. Skyroot is being celebrated today, but they started the company 2018. Like, how many people knew Pawan Chandana last year? Like, nobody, right? They were just toiling away in obscurity, chasing this dream. If you look at even very financially, like a typical time for a unicorn is about 10 years. Like, if we randomly pick 50 unicorns and say founded date, unicorn date 10 years. If you look at companies valuation, 90% of the valuation of all companies created in second decade of existence. So you can, you may want to do everything in 2-3 years, but there is no evidence that it happens that way.
Interesting. You've written 3 books. What's your process of writing? How do you write? When do you write?
So first of all, I need to be very clear in my head what I want to say. And for all of my 3 books, came out of some personal quest I was on anyway. And like, going back to this whole learning thing, and I was learning about. So at some point, and not some point, I think for a long period of time, I think about what is productivity. Why do some people do more with their time? Some people have studied systematically or done experiments on that ultimately culminated into no limits. Similar for other books, but when I'm clear what I want to say, like almost like I have a book contours clear in my head. It is simmering, for a long period of time. Like hacking health, similarly, I've been kind of health student for probably a decade and a half before I sat down to write a book. But when I'm clear, then there's a phase of research. Like for hacking health, so I hired one person. Between me and this person, we probably went over 100 plus health books over a 6 to 9 month period, compiled a summary, which now with AI is very easy, but it had to do manually 4 years ago. And then really creating a win again, going back to habit thing, and which was every time I try to make a habit change, like everyone else, I struggle. But at some point I am able to form the habit that morning 6:30 to 7:30, actually no, for me it was earlier because I had to go to gym also. So it was morning about 5:45 to 6:45. I'm going to sit in front of a computer, look at no other window and write. Now some days I'll write 20 words, some day 1,000 words. But typically the mechanics of book is book is somewhere between 75,000 to 100,000 words. Now, if you just type non-stop, most people can write about 500 words in half an hour. So, and if you give your if let's say you give yourself an hour for 500 words, now that's only 200 days. So if you can manage to just show up in front of computer for 200 days with 6 months, but most people take about a year to write a book and then process to review, edit, and all that. But I feel like if you can just carve out a 1 hour, and only thing you do, make sure you just show up and stare at a blank page for an hour, sooner or later you start writing and the book will. But assuming you had something to say, if you say I want to write a book and show with that intention, it's going to be very hard. Like right now, I've not worked on a book for last 2 years. I don't have anything in mind. There's something simmering in my head. I think I hopefully will be ready in a year, and then I'll restart this writing process.
Got it. How did you get into interested in health, and how would you describe your own evolution
Right.
on the health and fitness front?
Yeah, I've kind of I'm going through the coming back full circle kind of journey on health. I'll explain, but two things led me to this. One is I've always enjoyed sports, all my life. So I've been very active teenage years, college years, in my 20s. In Bay Area, one of the desi thing I did was start a cricket company. We used to play in this tennis ball cricket league. So one is that interest, but by late 20s, early 30s, you also notice kind of health is changing. And then I read this one very interesting book in 2006. Ray Kurzweil is now very well known, wasn't in that time. So in 2006, he came out with this book called Fantastic Voyage, Live Long Enough to Live Forever. So this is kind of, that biohacker longevity Bible. In some ways, you can say like that started this whole movement. So I happened to, I used to read a lot. So somewhere, I ended up reading that book, and I was totally blown away this idea that actually you can think of aging as a reversible process or something you slow down. So that whole seed of, kind of learning more about longevity, about health, fitness in general was sown from that. And since then, I experimented with variety of fitness things, long distance running, CrossFit, sprinting, all kind of diets. In those Atkins diets used to be very popular. From that onwards to variety of things. At some point, got into mental health. Meditation. Have been now it's been close to 10 years. I've been a fairly regular meditator. At some point, I learned the power of breathing. How and in the whole yoga Ayurveda traditions, pranayam is given a huge significance because of the profound impact it can have on our mental state and physical state and so on. So one is this is more informally reading and practicing on my own. Almost anything, including last 10 years, I've been to. I've stopped now, but I've been to many this biohacking longevity type of conference. So there I'll drink the Kool-Aid of whatever these guys are peddling. A lot of these self-styled biohacker types. And then, of course, Cure Food journey. There we had to think of a very different lens. How do we make things as simple as possible? Because when you try to do something at mass scale, this fitness, the biggest challenge is how do I create a fitness habit? So for Cure Food, single biggest problem we have worked on is if somehow you come to gym, how do we make you come to gym just 10 times? Because with 10 times, the linkage to habit formation becomes very strong. So Cure Fit, we have to think of, from that lens, it's been now 10 years. As you know, before pandemic, we are trying to build a lot more holistic platform. So
An ecosystem.
whole ecosystem of, enabling healthy lifestyle. So that has been a kind of parallel set of input. Where I am at today is I'm a little disillusioned with the science of longevity and biohacking. The science does not stack up. Uh, what what is proven and where there's a lot of science backing it is something we have known since ancient times. Fasting is good for you, sleep is good for you, take care of your emotional health, breathing exercise is good for you, and so on. Like simple, like spend time in nature, which is amazing for you. All these, different, rapamycin or M&M or red light therapy or cold therapy, everything is very questionable. It's very anecdotal based, and like some people feel great after a massage, but even for massage there are no studies, there is no evidence. Yeah, maybe improve some blood circulation, but how much of that you need or no. So where I'm at now is this is a very interesting area. It's good that it's getting so much attention, but science is very very sketchy. If you want to really pursue health span, and what health span is, that I want to be cognitively, physically fit well into my 80s. That is, I think, within reach for everyone, and it's almost nearly free. You just need
This
to
is also the primary thesis behind Outlive by Peter Attia, right?
Well, he also sells your $250,000 subscription. So what I am selling is, I'm saying, you don't have to spend any money at all. Like this is something we have, especially in India,
Yeah.
we have known for thousands of years. If you just peel out, the crux of what Ayurveda and yoga has to say, like all of these things are kind of already factored in. 2 meals a day, enough window of fasting, so that you are just not feeding something to your body continuously. Like all breathing, meditation techniques, are all in some ways calming down your mind and so on. Spending time in yoga is always done outdoors in nature. You do. Huberman made sunlight very famous, but you're supposed to yoga also at 7 8 a.m. to catch the morning light.
Right, I get that. The reason I mentioned Outlive by Peter Attia was not so much about his private practice, but I think I found the concept where he talks about, I mean, to go back to what we said about imagining the
Yeah.
future and long term,
Right.
I think it's very rarely that people think about what their physical capabilities will be when they're
Right.
70 or 80. And I think he explains it that, like, do you want to be able to kind of lift your grandchild when you're 70?
Right.
Do you want to be able to lift up your baggage
Yeah.
in an airplane and put it?
Right.
And thus, if you work backwards to the amount of strength and muscle
Right.
you'll need to have, I
No,
found that.
fair, good point. I kind of almost didn't pay attention to that because I have always thought about, I think a lot about future. So even in my 30s, 40s, I was very conscious about how I'll be at 70s, 80s. In some way, I'm kind of building towards that. So, but maybe it's not that obvious, from, I think, and it is not obvious. And I think especially for people who are crossing their 40s, 50s, there's a lot you can do now. Which will
That's when the
impact,
muscle,
right.
like, the reversal starts to happen.
All the sign of aging will start, and
Yeah.
the people's health between the age of 40 to 60, it changes dramatically. But it's all in your hands in terms of what I think 2 hours a day of just Now people, again, this becomes it's a trade-off. Should I invest 2 hours a day now so I'm disease free, pain free, I can still have productive years in my 70s, 80s, or those 2 hours are going to social media, and Bangalore has no dearth of pubs, I can hang out in and have you live only once philosophy for now, and then pay for it. And there are enough, probably more people who think that way.
Good. So what's your, now having been in the health and fitness space and gone through various I think methods and approaches over the years, what is your current stack of fitness look like?
It's
In any given
for me,
week, what do you do?
see, sleep is the most important thing. So this is my, if you can't do nothing, sleep for, I'll say 8 hours. If you
How
spend
much
eight,
do you manage on an ongoing
eight.
basis? 8.
I only compromise when there's something some sickness in family or something, but like barely 1 or 2 days in a month I don't get that. So that's number one. Number two, I'm not going in the order of day and not of importance. Eat less. And eat less, again, have your own mechanism. I think what I've learned is now fasting is good for you, but it doesn't matter how you fast. So you can have a 12-hour fasting window in a day. That's all. If they do 12 or 14 or 16, I don't think in max that makes that much difference. Or you may eat regularly 3 meals a day.
But do portion control.
Do portion control. That's, but also see, portion control is still making your digestive system work continuously. Do a weekly fast where you have longer window of something which is a little difficult for you. So I think both doing the difficult things and just giving your digestive system a rest, that's where it can repair itself and so on. So their fasting window is quite important. Number three, I'll say movement. See, one analogy for people to remember is, see, if you analyze human brain, the biggest chunk of real estate is dedicated to functions which enable me to move. Almost 40% is this whole visual cortex. Now, why do I need to see things? Plants don't have eyes because they don't need to move. I need to see where I'm going, where there's danger, where there's a food and so on. Similarly, huge, like almost 15-20% dedicated to just all the signal that are coming from hand. That's where hands are very sensitive. There's so much motor control, very fine grained motor control. So if you don't exercise, you engage these things, in movement, then you are, in some way, your brain is getting
starved of stimulus.
Right kind of stimulus. It's not growing. So, and almost till the age of 50, 55, as long as you're moving enough and your heart rate is going up and down a little bit, it doesn't matter whether you do yoga or running or Pilate or gym or whatever, or just climb stairs up and down. After 50, strength training becomes very important, which is almost, counterintuitive. You think strengthening your 20s, 30s to have all these muscles, because after 50, the muscle loss acceleration spikes. And a lot of people, by the time they're 70, they've lost a big chunk of their muscle. So a fall means, they fracture, and their bones are also pretty brittle by the time, which also, if you're strength training, they're not going to be as brittle. So, you will first of all not fracture. Things will heal easily. You will have this muscle cushion. So there's now, and there are a lot of studies on that. Your ability to retain muscle in your 60s, 70s has a very direct correlation to how long you live. So I would say movement and some strength training, especially if you're over 50. And last, your just emotional health or cognitive health. Many dimensions to that. Maybe I'll not go into a whole lecture on that. But how you manage your stress in your life. Whether you have a few very close relationship, people you can confide in and just feel like totally trusted, totally at ease. If you have other kind of, these days a lot of people have these hidden psychological issues, like you can get them. Any fitness routine directly addresses it. You can have meditation routine or therapy or variety of tools available. But just if you do these things, you're good. You can do pretty much what Peter Attia has to offer.
Got it. What you run a podcast called SparX?
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing
SparX,
it right? SparX. How many episodes? I mean, you've been doing it for many years.
I think we are closing 3 years now, and it was weekly for a couple of years, so 100, and then it's fortnightly now, so about 125, 130 episodes.
120, 130, in addition to everything else that you're doing. So my question is really simple. Why do you run a podcast? What do you get out of it? And once you answer that, what's your method?
Right. So the genesis of podcast was my books. And my books was, see, I've been student all my life, and at some point, when you're studying, you feel like your brain is stuffed. Now you need an outlet for it to come out. So both from what I've been reading as well as my life experiences. So I wanted to communicate, which is what led me to writing my books. After I've written my books, all my books are rated very well on Amazon. They are between 4.5 to 4.7. But all of them are sold between 20,000, 30,000 copies. So I don't write these books where 20,000 people can read. I felt I have something to say about productivity. I have something to say about healthy lifestyle. And I had something to say about startups. But I wanted, then if I'm putting all this effort, and each of my books are very well researched, uh, I wanted to have reach out to a lot of people. And then, I woke up to the fact that, in podcast in general, digital medium is how people consume information these days. The book reading is on the decline.
Right.
And I felt like I've created all this content anyway. So can I, and I, by 23, I was also a avid listener of a few different podcasts, and which I enjoyed immensely. It also, my book reading shifted to podcast listening. So I could see that this medium works for me. I have a need to communicate. So that's, put two and two together, which was very uncomfortable in the beginning. I think it's very difficult for me to, conversation easy, but I also wanted to do this solo podcast, which was, very, very tough. It still is tough, but getting a little easier by the day. The process wise, it's, so I mean, most of it is still guest episodes. And there is a small team also which helps me manage this. So they will do first round of research, the person I'm going to talk to, their background, the work they've done, if they've written a book, go through that book and so on. And they'll produce about 10, 12 page research document for me, which I start going through few days. It's very helpful if they have done other podcasts. So I'll at least listen to their most popular podcasts. I'll get a broad sense of what they stand for. We've also changed the kind of episode we are doing. So I'm also increasingly aligning more and more of just everything I do around deep tech. I enjoy it thoroughly. I also, care about it. So in podcasts also, we are mostly having deep tech related conversations. So in the last 6-7 months, nearly all the conversations we've had is where
So in
somebody.
some senses, your podcast has moved away from its original vision of just enabling you to talk about the stuff that you'd research for your books.
That's it.
And
So
now
that
the-
was, so I had a communication need, as well as we were positioning the SparX initially for people who are high performance oriented. If we can give them, similar to you in some ways, mental models and tools to pursue excellence, which in some ways I would, kind of packaging all my work and experience is been some kind of pursuit of high performance excellence. But I think as my over last 18 months, my kind of latent interest in deep tech is becoming more and more
that
overt.
was my next question. Are you doing SparX today? Are you the primary beneficiary of a SparX episode, or is the listener the primary beneficiary?
I think now, well, okay, it's a good question. Let me think.
I can tell
I
you
think-
how it's been for
Yeah,
me.
right. Okay, sure, yeah.
I'm the primary
Right.
beneficiary of first principles,
Right.
because for me,
Yeah.
I mean, I also in many ways
Right.
started it thinking that, oh, I mean, there is no such thing where there is no such podcast where we can have deep conversations
Right.
with founders. But then over time,
Right.
I realized that this is me learning as well.
Mhm.
Yes, of course, I'm also doing it for our listeners, but I think
Understood. That makes sense. I think it's both, but it's, I think, so first 2 years, we had a lot of amazing guests. And I also was like, wow, I enjoyed just sitting down with this person, having this conversation. Whether we record and post it out there doesn't matter, right? So that way, in some ways, I was a huge beneficiary. But I always had even at that time, this thing in mind, like, I really feel like I've had some interesting life experiences and the certain way of looking at things that I do want to communicate. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put in the effort to write those books. So that communication was also a need, which I do believe, at least, for some people, it's beneficial. As we pivot to deep tech, I think it's more I'm trying to evangelize the need and the urgency around deep tech, the possibilities around deep tech, because I really believe that at India right now, our whole deep tech scorecard is not good. And the way the global economic, geopolitical landscape is shifting, and all the aspiration in India, we have, aspiration of on this Viksit Bharat and uplifting, pretty much everyone to the middle class. standard, which is going from $2,500 per capita income to $10,000 per capita income, which is, which cannot happen where we have, thousands of companies like Skyroot doing. So partly now I want to play however small the role, and I think I'm kind of repurposing SparX as a one more tool that I have available to kind of evangelize and participate in this dialogue.
So in some senses, it's also becoming another version of Miraki Labs, where it is a
100%, yeah.
platform
That's right.
which allows you to
Yeah.
kind of experiment
yeah.
and
Yeah, no,
play
just
with.
just to put it more explicitly, right? So these days, what I study and consume is nearly all deep tech. The work I do through Miracle Labs is all deepish tech. I want to do more deep tech. Sparks is about deep tech, and I'm participating in some of the government forums, etc. Also to. So yes, I mean, I like now next 2 decades of my career. Ideally, I will want to be a participant and hopefully contribute.
So I'm now imagining our 2x2 as a three-dimensional
Right.
2x2,
Okay.
where there is learning and there is winning
Right.
and there is communicating or teaching, which is the third element, right? Because the learning arc is helping you ingest,
Yeah.
right? The winning arc is helping you execute,
Right.
but I think it's the communicating or
Is
teaching
there
arc
maybe
which is
that's I mean, more than I don't know. I think there's something to that, but I will say something like either ecosystem or something. See, the learning and winning are very selfish activities.
right.
But I'm
Correct.
kind of done
That's
with
why I'm
that.
saying teaching and communication is
so
outward
exactly,
forcing.
exactly. So this is
To give back.
exactly in some ways giving back, right? Is that arc, and the area I want to give back is deep. I'm also like slowly my philanthropy stuff is also taking shape. Again, that is all aligned. So I right now only contribute to I used to others, but now I'm exclusively just
The Olympic Quest, the Indian Olympic Quest is.
So I was on that, and that was a very fulfilling. But I stepped down from the board of that because
What are your
So I
what are the directions where your philanthropic architect?
just research institutes. So I have an active program with TIFR Mumbai, with ICTS here. I have something with actually Cambridge in UK, but I think it will eventually have an impact in India.
Got it.
So it just I want my philanthropic dollars to just go fund some research somewhere.
Got it. All right. We talked about people and talent. Is there anything that you've changed your mind about? Any beliefs about managing people that you've had when you were a younger entrepreneur and you've changed now, that this is the way people should be managed versus how you think about it? Actually, let me take a step back, because I think there was this question I had earlier which I'd completely forgot about, which is, in one of your conversations you had said that you believe in empowerment and loyalty.
Yeah.
Right? Now help me understand what that. I understand empowerment in some senses. What is your definition of loyalty? Because there is a strain of thought that runs in many people, saying that it's just a job, there's no need to be loyal, they pay you a salary, which is why you do, right? So what does loyalty mean to you?
See, look, I am not recalling the context from this and how, but I'll tell you, like, this is my what I truly believe in this area, right? And I think that for me, CureFit, pandemic is the best, great example. So at that time, our business was, went to zero. Some investors backed out of, active transaction they were closing fund for. Some came through, some backed out of that. But almost none of the core people in the company left. And this was a time when a lot of other digital things were taking off. AdTech was on fire, right? This whole food delivery or quick commerce was trying to take off. So it's not like people did not dearth of opportunity, but it was loyalty to in some way the mission that it's an unfinished job. We want to see it through, and we want to survive together. So that is and that loyalty is not you demand when the going gets tough. That is something kind of, it's more that fellowship of the ring kind of mindset, that we are here, we are coming together, we have shared belief system, shared value system, mutual respect for what we are doing together, and now we are in it together. Now that those teams take 2 to 3 years to form, but if you are able to form those teams and they stay together for 5-6 years, if you go back and trace any successful history or run a company had for 5 or 7 years, it always boils down to a group of people who are stellar individually but even better together. And that is, I think, partly I've been able to do in my own way, being able to create those teams. And it's probably single most reason why I had at least better betting average than what entrepreneurship gives you by default. And one of the key reasons is that I've been able to somehow catalyze those teams, and this is a two-way street. You cannot demand loyalty. It's a two-way street. you know you are having a difficult, you've been a stellar performer, but you're having a tough time. Take a few months off, take a sabbatical, recharge yourself, come back. Job is not going somewhere. Like, I actively encourage everyone to have a number two, saying if you have a important role in the company, you should actively encourage number two, and that again acts as a very good filter. People who are self-secure, who believe in empowering other people, growing other people, they're very happy because this number two person gets so much leeway. Like, you take care of operational detail while I do strategic thinking, or I'm going to take some time off, or now we've got a new initiative. Okay, I'll run the show, you go build this new initiative, right? There's a lot of, but people who are not secure, they're always threatened. If there's a number two who is almost similar to me, what is the guarantee I'll have this job tomorrow, right? So I think
that's true. I remember this very interesting model from, I think I read this article in HBR about Apple's method of, this was from Apple University, where every Apple senior exec at any given point in time is teaching part of their role to someone below them, is operating their own role, which takes the majority of their time, and is learning something about the next role above them, right? So in some senses, all three of them are doing. I think it's a fantastic thing. Because you're right, it separates out, automatically filters out those who are comfortable with those.
So this, and this intersection of very high competence and very high loyalty, and this is not loyalty to a person. It's like loyalty to the mission,
team almost,
team,
at the
like
mission.
Mutual, right?
That's right.
That I think is quite magical. It's very hard to find, hard to build, but when you do build it, it works like magic.
Are there any phrases that you're known for? Do you have any pet phrases?
There are two types of it. One is just like, for example, I'll say absolutely a lot, but that's that people say to make fun of me, not to, not something I'm known for. Think my teams will give better answer.
Got it. What would all your, over the years, your direct reports agree about you?
I am very direct. I think they will all agree with, like, I think whatever I'm thinking, I just state it out. It's no one has to second guess what I'm thinking, and that is one leader. So as a result, I think the people I work with, we are able to build this kind of mutual trusting relationship fairly quickly. Like, I say the same thing and say all the rooms always, and even if someone were to come to me and say, like, person B saying, I think person C this, I say, excellent, great feedback, let's call person C, and I'll immediately call the person and then say, B has something to say about you. Let's all sit down and hash it out. And this I have done religiously pretty much all my career, and everyone who has worked with me will agree that this is something I would almost never.
Direct. I'll extend that question. Give me two more adjectives that your colleagues or team members over the years would use for you.
See, I get a little embarrassed. People call me, like, a lot of people call me, down to earth, and say, pretty easy, relatable. It's a nice compliment. I feel happy that people see that way. But it's not something, it's not a goal or something I work on. I just, try to be myself. So that's the, these days, last 5-6 years of my career, I start to, especially junior people, I think now, because I've got a bit of a background, and so some people, like younger people, find me, in some way scary, which is very bad for me, and something I want to work on. It's a part of me. I'm still trying to reinvent myself as an early stage founder. And early stage founder, you need to have like, everyone has to feel equal and be able to speak their mind. So when people tell me they find me scary, that's kind of negative feedback that I need to do something about.
Okay, I have a slightly related observation. One of the things, and this goes back to our earlier conversation about the use of AI and how those who are experienced and hands-on sort of get supercharged with AI. I've heard and I've read, and I've maybe even experienced partly at the Ken, that when experienced people use AI to kind of supercharge themselves, it does come across as, in some senses, well, not scary, but sort of like,
Demoralizing.
demoralizing to younger people, because they're seeing something that potentially for them had an opportunity to
Right.
make those mistakes, do it,
Yeah.
etc., being done by someone who shouldn't be doing it, but now can very
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's part of the case or
Yeah.
not, but because I'm guessing that they see you as 30 years of experience, and now you can generate
Right.
working code which can
I
accept
think it's both
payments
of it, yeah,
and
both
yeah.
AI turbocharging, as well as in some ways, see, like I've seen a lot of mistakes. So if I feel like your current thought pattern matches some mistake pattern, and I'm able to finish the sentence, or you after 1 minute,
But
so
you're
I'll cut you
preventing
off.
them from making
Like
that
so,
mistake.
I'm in some ways being efficient in some way, but you're right, preventing them from making mistake and
Hmm.
even not letting them finish their thought process or articulate what they're thinking that way, right? So that's something I need to fight for. I mean, there's no other
Got
way.
it. You're a parent, you've 2 kids. What's the difference? I mean, you said your dad was in BHEL and you grew up in Haridwar, and that I'm sure it drove a lot of your own worldviews and ambitions,
Right.
etc. How is it different for you, for your kids? Because now suddenly they're no longer in that same
Right.
context.
I have, I've tried to build a relationship of equals with both my kids, and what that meant is pretty much sharing, whatever is going on in my life with them as much as I can, which is, within the, bounds of parent-child, whatever is, kosher that to share, that. So I think that way, I feel it's almost in some way at work, like it's a relationship, built on transparency and a lot of just shared context. They know what is going on in my life, what I'm struggling with, what I'm worried about, and all of what I'm feeling good about. So that's a one. Second,
What's their worldview?
see, today their worldview is they don't like capitalism that much, or
I mean,
and I'm
most
being
young people
right.
are
I'm being generous,
can't blame them.
right? But it's also, and for the time being, it's they're kind of also acting on that as well in some way. Definitely my daughter, so she's finishing her 4th year of college. She has decided to basically become a researcher in academia. So that's a very, in some ways, very overt rejection of, at least, I mean, academia is also capitalism of some kind, but it's very at least subdued.
But at least
And
she's not doesn't want to join a hedge fund.
no, far from it. She, I think, he'll probably murder someone rather than join a hedge fund, right? So that far removed. And my son is also, I think, I mean, he's too young for these decisions, but also kind of inclined in similarish direction.
Got it. Speaking again of parenting, one of the constants in many conversations that you have with Indian professionals, and I think I've had it as well. I think you've had it as well. You must have had it because why are you working with X company? Like, for example, I was reading somewhere else, like, I mean, I was reading this book about TCS by S. Ramadurai. When he joined TCS, is like, I mean, and subsequently he was like, people wouldn't send their kids to TCS because they were like, why did you not join Infosys or Wipro? Right? I've had that in my career as well. So, I mean, the point that I'm trying to draw is that the opinion of parents in Indian professionals' careers, it comes sometimes as approval, sometimes disapproval, etc. But it's there.
But
has it changed? Should it change?
I think it's changing dramatically. It's quite dramatically. I think it is changing continuously. And especially, the age that, let's say you and my kids are, I really don't think the parents' point of view will matter at all in their.
If anything, it's the other way. It's the
Yeah,
opposite.
absolutely. It's in their important life decisions. I don't think, and which is in my book, that's, I mean, ultimately, what do you want as a parent, right? You want to have people who are, when they're mature, independent, thinking adults who can think on their feet. If you're done, that's job well done, and they will take it from there. As long as just are nice to each other afterwards, I think that's a pretty good outcome.
Got it. All right. A couple of last questions. What do weekends look like for you?
So I usually Saturday is actually it's not it's probably not a very good answer, but it's not that I want to say on air. It doesn't look that different. My and what I mean by that is my weekdays also I limit my work hours to 9-10 hours. So I don't like those crazy 10-12 hours. My typical day is get up around 5:30, be in gym by 6:30, 6 to 7:30 at gym time, some meditation, yoga, etc. After that, start work properly by 9:30, 10. and wrap up work by 6:37. Now my daughter, in the morning I had half an hour call with my daughter. She was in the US. Evening again 7 to 8 is for I try to meet my son like almost every single day. 8 to 9, 9:30 wind down. If I have to think about something, sleep by 9:30. So that doesn't change. What changes in the weekend is that the work time, those 9-10 hours, become more of a kind of icy work time. A lot more cloud coding these days, or listening to a podcast, or occasionally meeting somebody, meeting my parents. But fundamentally, the structure of the day is not very different.
Got it.
I have zero social life, which I can say in here. I'm neither proud of it nor feel sad about it. It's just the way it is, and just the way
Got it.
it works for me.
What's your relationship with food? Do you have any favorite foods, or is it very
Yeah,
transactional?
I know. I mean, my formal relation with food is very with that of what's the word? What's the word there? Control in some ways. I'm not able to find the
Mhm.
but I'm very careful about what I eat. That's a formal relationship.
Got it.
But
Pickiness?
not picky.
Choosiness?
No. It's
Got it.
when you restrain yourself in some ways. It's a
all right.
moderation. Some way we
Got
can
it.
say.
Got it.
But I like all the North Indian sweets. If there's a soft corner for that, it's any given day. If I want to boost up my mood, it's like some North Indian, either chaat type of snack or sweet type of
Got
snack
it.
is my go-to thing.
What's your most common dish when you eat out? What's your default favorite dish?
These
Safe.
dal roti sabzi.
Got
I will have simple Indian meal. Like that's my most preferred meal by a long shot, even when I'm eating out.
Got it. When do you read books?
Now it has become podcast. An audiobook. So sometime in the gym time, so I'm playing something, and then just my wind down time evening.
Good. Are you a 1x person or are you a 1.5x?
1x. I want to no, I the 1.5x doesn't work.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with your life?
I think I'm pretty happy. I feel very privileged and very fortunate. There's so many lucky breaks that worked out for me. A pretty decent platform to do things, and also freedom, I guess. So I think I feel pretty. My parents are still around. I meet them in fact, I think your parents, my parents live there,
Yeah.
neighbors. So I think it's a privilege. They are probably well into their 80s and 70s, healthy life. Pretty close to my kids. Pretty satisfied with how my career is progress. So not
You
much.
use a lot of words. It's a 1 to 10 ranking on a scale of 1 to 10.
8.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mukesh. Such a wonderful conversation.
Thanks, Rohin. I really enjoyed this conversation. You made me think about a lot of things that I have not thought about for many years. So
I'm
this,
glad. Like I said,
my-
I enjoy these conversations because I get to learn so much more from
my
others.
introspection quota for this week is done. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Rohin.
Thank you. If you've been a long-time listener to this podcast and are glad we're back, do tell the world by sharing this episode with everyone you think will find it valuable. This is me, Rohin Dharmakumar, signing off. We'll be back soon with another episode.